So many of you live in the town. Accessible. Well, now that that's said, I of course want to thank our hostess, Shannon. It's really an honor to be here. It really is. I never dreamed that anything could happen. And when Shannon suggested it several months ago, at first I thought, there's no way this could happen. But then suddenly I realized that what's been in the works for several years now is the creation of a book of my 50 years of jewelry making. And I was like, bingo. That's it. This is the perfect opportunity. So I want to thank Shannon for thinking of me out of all the other incredible artists who could have been here. And it's been a pleasure to work with Shannon for 25 years now. But, primarily up in Durango, of course, but ever since she's been in town here. Who knows if we're branching off to New York City?
New York City.
Where she opened just a few months ago.
Congratulations.
And I want to thank my wife for giving me some really good advice. She basically, as I mused over what I might possibly say, she said basically, keep your mouth shut. And don't embarrass yourself too much. As I say, the book itself is actually online at the present time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which my very good friends and colleagues here, Shelley and Michael Neese, are a huge part of this whole thing. They are some of my closest associates for the last 41 years. And they, Michael in particular, did all the photography, much of the photography you can see on the screen, and over the last 40 some years, he and Shelley together have been huge, and anything that I had to do, they made it happen. So I'm once again very happy to have been working with them, and they have actually put that book together. Because I was too busy running around the country with my wife. And so it's, what do you say? It's a lifetime, really. 50 years just involved in one aspect of the career, but there's earlier things in life and influences many people, and it's extremely important that people, it's all about people. What do we make things for? Who do we make things for? What is the joy of life ultimately? It really wouldn't be fun at all with it. At all.
Oh, that's okay.
So we started off in my little world. And I wanted to just bring up a couple of things. In my childhood, if anybody's trying to figure out where I came from, this is where I came from. Monsters and cowboys. This was the man that I grew up with my whole youth. The Frankenstein monster. Glenn Strand was a huge influence in my life.
Really?
And all of that kind of dovetails. He was a New Mexico cowboy living in Southern California. He was a great guy, and I learned a lot from him. How to mow the lawn. small portion of this book, really. But in order, so it doesn't drive everybody completely crazy, we cut it way down.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yep.
Oh.
Well, you see the date 73. This is my home. This is where I lived on Upper Canyon Road, Apodaca. This is where everything began.
Wow.
This was my studio. That's where I got my water. It's a little well. And it's hard to believe. Anna Magnana lived right across. She lived right across the Arroyo at the bar. Camino Militar. 1300, yeah. Throw Pinon nuts at one another. Terry Hahn was my girlfriend at that time, and a great help. And she is the one who bought me my very first jewelry saw and a piece of copper. It spent $6, and that started my whole career.
Wow.
This is inside the pump house. And the other house. And it gives you an idea of it. And every day I'd wake up to the sound of the anvil on Manuel Apodaca's blacksmith forge at the bottom of the street. Yeah.
Where's random babies up there?
Well, things just happen. So, moving along here, I'm self-taught. As I said, a piece of copper, and I found bits of steel laying around the property, and I made my own tools. And I progressed very rapidly from copper to what? Brass. Yes, I made a real big leap. And the first pieces I was making were buttons, because buttons were kind of a hot item back in those days. And so I made a small collection of these buttons, and they immediately sold to, where is he? Jeff Lewis is in the house. There he is, all the way back there. Jeff Lewis is another one of my dearest and oldest associates, and through life, everything that we've done in the last 15 more years has been kind of a parallel in many respects. And it's always a pleasure to see him. Made a lot of concho belts back in those days. Manuel Villalobos here. I mean, he owned a little jewelry store right next to where Evangelos is on Yellowstone Street. And he was a great mentor of mine. He was taught his craft at the University of Chihuahua. And he knew his stuff. He was a really good goldsmith and just a great guy. So what he did was he recognized that I didn't know anything, so he taught me everything the hard way. He taught me all the wrong things so that I would really learn it and I wouldn't be lazy. And we became great friends. He let me work in his shop, and it progressed me quite rapidly. That was a commissioned piece that somebody asked me to make, and when people ask you to make something, I don't know what you're making, so it forces you to learn new tricks. This was my second workshop, much larger, much more elegant. But I was moving along. I made a lot of these, and I'd bring them down here to the plaza, and I would trade them and sell them to the San Domingo ladies along the plaza. They didn't turn around and sell them. They kept those jewels, and they would not sell them. This is a handful of Cerrillos turquoise. I first went to the Cerrillos mines in 1973 when a friend showed up at my studio pump house, and I was talking about the fact that I can't really afford turquoise. I don't know where to buy it. I had no sources for it. And he said, well, I know about this mine down the road over here. And I said, well, let's go. And sure enough, 30 minutes later, we were at this rural location out on a dirt road, and lo and behold, there was turquoise. This is a piece made from that very turquoise that I was able to gather on those first trips out. Moving along, I picked up a bunch of gold from Don Matson was his name. He was an antique dealer here in town. I melted it all down and I made that bracelet. This is another of my first pieces made with Sirius turquoise. And I once bailed a friend out of jail with that. We all got in trouble. But that's a very heavy piece of 14 karat gold.
Wow.
And one of my earliest kind of breakthrough designs. I never really enjoyed the idea of strictly imitating other designs. I just worked with general motifs, and then I little by little created my own. And this was my very first inlay piece, the Mickey Mouse ring, which was made down in the Red Springs area of South of Gallup. Some friends were making those things. Kind of showed me how to do it. So I went out and bought my own machine and started making my own stuff. And that led down the road to more stone cutting, all these developments. This is abalone shell, believe it or not. And then I really broke free, and I started doing all these wild contemporary designs.
Yeah,
Vision.
I saw that, Wendy.
This was a whole big series that really took me in a new direction. Oh, and here's one on Wendy's finger, actually.
Yeah, I noticed.
Antique piece. But I really loved working with the stone. I just kept progressing in these materials. And that was a really challenging piece of ivory and lapis. Then I went from there into carving turquoise. Persian turquoise.
Wow. That's cool too.
For ivory. So when 1977 came, I had already made all that stuff. It progressed from this strictly handmade, self-taught, everything self-taught. And when my love life fell apart, about that time, it just so happened another door opened, and that was a friend that was working in Gallup, south of Gallup, and it was invited me to come down to Gallup and work at this jewelry making facility. And so I thought, well, this is the time. So I jumped and I went. And I became the manager of this whole jewelry production called BG Mud. Some people might know that company. And in this, they were all Navajo people, all the employees. And look at this place. Primitive, it was right up my alley. It didn't have any running water. It had no, we had wood heat. I mean, I was there. I mean, I was ready. So this was what the line we were creating looked like after I got my hands on it. and changed a whole lot of the designs and made a lot of these pieces that were all lost wax casts. That was a very big breakthrough for me. And you know, I didn't even know what do you mean lost? Where'd you lose it? You know, where'd the wax go? I had no idea. This was the wax and the casting. Woody Peanut was his name. He was the only man in the place besides myself. And that was a year and a half to crash course in business and how to run a production. And I was really fired up when I left there and came back to Santa Fe. And I decided I'm going to be making belt buckles and Western jewelry instead of anything that could be confused with necessarily 100% native, because that was not really my direction. So what I did was I had determined that I always loved making belt buckles anyway, but yeah, and the movie star thing too. But anyway, it's supposed to move. This, by the way, was where I was living out at Royal Hondo. I called it the Zen Bunkhouse, and that is where I started my whole business. I came back to Santa Fe. I had $1,000 and 100 ounces of silver, and I thought I was set to go. And that was all I had in the world. And I started this line of buckles. This is a little later on down the road in that particular collection. The belt buckle business took off immediately for me. And within a year of my starting up, I was in New York City, where I landed with a handful of these belt buckles and $35 in my pocket. And I immediately was fortunate enough to be introduced to buyers from Billy Martin's, which was the hottest store, one of the hottest stores in New York City at that time. Tiny little place, really not a whole lot bigger than this, on Manhattan Avenue. And over the next, maybe as many as 30 years, they were always my biggest single store. I even made all these little badges for them. But that catalog was created by my children niece. Moving along here, now we've got turquoise rocks again because we're back at Cerrillos. In 1985, I took a drive down the road on Highway 14, and just doing the usual thing, you know, drinking beer. And I decided to take a look at the old turquoise mine where I hadn't been in a long time because I'd heard there was something going on out there. They paved the road. They took all the rock down from the mountain, from the turquoise mine, and they were going to pave. And it made the papers. I was reading about this. I want to go check it out. So, over there. So, we'll get back to that part of the story when we get to the turquoise section. This was another, right around that same era. I had been, once again, in a somewhat of a starvation period there because as gangbusters as my business was right out of the gate, these unfortunate things happen in life that you never predict.
Right.
And in this case, the unfortunate thing was called the Hunt brothers. Booker and Nelson Hunt were these two Texas yahoos. They had a lot of money, and they decided they were going to corner the whole silver market. And they took the price of silver from a nice cozy, you could say $4 an ounce, and before it was all over, it was $50 an ounce.
Wow.
And they couldn't have driven the stake through the heart of the silver business and the jewelry business. And gold followed silver and rose, I think close to $2,000, which in 1980 was a killer.
Right, absolutely.
But what I was going to tell you about that buckle was that right over here at the Hilton, this movie production was in production, and this guy named Michael Nesmith, that you might remember, he was from the Monkees, and he wrote Linda Ronstadt's song and all that stuff. But anyway, he was making a film over here, and he wanted a buckle to give to his crew, and I was fortunate enough to put enough money in my pocket after that to start my whole business up after the Hunt brothers went down. So that was really major, major stuff. Yeah, the legend, it's called The Adventure of Lyle Swan, which the movie came out under a different name. By that time, I was into wax carving. I learned about wax carving, so that was another big step in the right direction. Not long after that, I can't remember what the exact date is, comes the Cattle Barons Ball out of Dallas.
Whoopee.
Wow.
Wow.
They do a whole bunch of badges to their Cattle Barons Ball. And also in Santa Fe, we were having a lot of fun doing movie festivals, film festivals. Folks from Telluride came down here and decided to do a second festival here in town. And it was fantastic every time. Francis Ford Coppola and his whole entire family and crew, and almost all of his actors were here for this particular festival in '83. And I have videos on all of this stuff. This was another little fun deal that happened in actually 1994 with Rosalie Murphy and Armin Lara. Invited me to show with them in a 3-person show in Monaco. Made that for the Buffalo Bill Museum in Cody. D.H. Lawrence Festival was a really another amazing thing here in town, where out at the Indian School, the amphitheater at the Indian School, 16 major big-name movie stars, including people like Elizabeth Taylor,
Wow.
and all kinds of big names. Jane Alexander, she's in the house. Anyway, it was a really big deal. I made all the tattoos, pins, and so forth with that. Rosalie Murphy was really one of my all-time greatest friends, and one of the greatest people in Santa Fe. She was, of course, Pink Adobe since 1944, and anyway, we became very, very good friends in the 80s, and that's when things really kicked off big time, and Santa Fe became a fun city. This was actually an earlier situation with Johnny Cash out at Eads Ranch, filming a movie called Gunfight. First tour at the mine, after I made the purchase on the mine property. Phone rang, and a gal from La Fonda, the Santa Fe Detours, it's called, not Indian Detours, but Santa Fe Detours, said I had some people that wanted a private tour. The beads I wanted to point out are by good friend Scott DeBriand, who you know, he's top bead maker here in the area. Galisteo, very good friend. And he made all that out of the surreal turquoise that we were finding back in the early 80s. Oh. Different materials. Beautiful piece of Chinese turquoise there. Get magnetized. How do you like that?
I like it.
I like that.
Awesome.
This I was very proud of. This is one of my first ever big magazine ads. Peter Fonda and I became friends later, and we became very good friends. And he would always stay at my guest house when he come through town. Many, many times. And he buy jewelry too. This was one of the cool things that came out of getting involved with the mines. Okay, now I never wanted the material to go out into the world without having it have the name of the location where it came from. And I still put Tiffany or Surreal Turquoise or what have you on every piece. Of course, that piece wound up in the Sharper Image catalog and was blasted all over. You know, they had millions of copies sent all over the country. So within a very, nanosecond, they got a call from Tiffany asking that they please stop, cease and desist, and don't use our name anymore. I thought, it's a legitimate name because this is the Tiffany mine. All the turquoise that was initially, I would say, Phil Chambliss, close your ears. Phil knows more about this than anybody. But most all of the turquoise production initially went to Tiffany Company from 1891. Well, I think 1950, is that right, Pat? 1950, Pat McGraw, right here in the house, folks. She wrote the book. Her great-grandfather was the miner, did all this mining. J.P. McNulty. He's really one of my biggest heroes in life. And her book is fabulous, called Tiffany Blue. That's him.
Wow.
You see what a mountain of earth came out of just one of the Tiffany mines back then. And it was in the right around 1980 that the highway department it was actually the state highway department, decided to pave the road. And they said, look at all that great road base. Well, it's really great road base. It's full of artifacts. It's full of turquoise.
Wow.
And then they discovered that it also was very valuable. And they were required to bring it all back to where they got it. Big deal. But J.P. McNulty, his story is so fantastic. I've been reading the book again, and beautifully written, by the way, beautifully done. It's just a really important piece of local history. The mines themselves, of course, go back over 1,000 years. And, well, they're still going, but mostly all that goes on in these mines now is movie production. And once in a great while, if Terry Grace should so surrender, she will throw a party in there. I personally cannot throw any parties, so don't ask. If anybody wants to throw a party, they gotta talk to Terry. She knows how to do it, and she's got the insurance. I can't get the insurance. But it's, she throws great parties. Let's see a couple of pictures before we're done. This was a very famous book. It came out in 1915, I believe, or maybe 1911. And it is still quoted by most anybody who knows anything about turquoise. Philip probably has opinions on this. Philip Chambliss is announced, and he is a major historian of American mining and anything to do with turquoise mining. And he has done the work. This was a really great honor for me. I've known of this piece. This is an Aztec piece that was given to Cortez, and it wound up in the British Museum eventually. And I was honored to be part of the turquoise seminar at the British Museum in 2011. He established 670 AD. Now, that's not my sign, so I would have probably said it a few years later. But here are a couple of examples of turquoise in Tiffany's. I'm not sure if this book was written, I think much later, but they had denied for the longest time. I would go into Tiffany, I would visit them, and when I talked to their historian, we don't know anything about turquoise. One day the phone rang, we attended more years ago, and the woman starts quizzing me about the turquoise, and it turns out she's the head designer for Tiffany Company, and they want to do a whole collection based on some of their historic sources, because they were really proud to show American gemstones. And they had won an award in Paris, and it was the first time an American gemstone won anything. These, by the way, were made right here, probably on Palace Avenue, around 1900. Back in those days, filigree was what was being made. There was no Native American much of anything at that point, in terms of any kind of market. This is the Castilian mine. Altogether, there were 16 mines when I bought the property. But some of them were just holes and prospects that were kind of dangerous, whatever. And along came the abandoned mine reclamation project that I contacted in 1990. And I asked them if they would be interested in working with my mine. And boy, did they jump in on that. So they came out and did all this research. It took years because this data is very thorough, but they do. But it resulted in half gates, a lot of holes filled that were, really not usable mining for any purpose other than falling and breaking in. So that's all fixed up. It's a beautiful place. It's a really important, it's an American treasure. Here's J.P. McNulty. I was going to bring him down. This was my first ever attempt at sculpture. I had this crazy notion to have Glenn Goodacre or somebody like that make all these figures that would be representative of historic figures that might have been involved in the mines, and that I'd have these, these native miners and so forth represented in bronze. And then when I found out how ridiculously expensive it would be to do something like that, I said, hey, I can do that. And that's what happened. stick? No. There goes great parties. I changed the name at one point that we were incorporating, and ever since Sharper Image and Tiffany Company didn't want to use the name Tiffany anymore, or I just changed the name. I thought, wouldn't it be great to just call it Millennium? I mean, it's a 1,000-year-old place, and what is more appropriate? In 1994, I decided that I needed to know what kind of yields of turquoise could be found. So I had a really wonderful man who would come to me as a turquoise cutter, and I was told that he knew how to make jewelry and cut stones. So I gave Mark Ziegler a bag of rocks, and I said, okay, show me what you can do. And he took them home, and came back with some very nicely cut stones. And that began a relationship that lasted more than 20 years. And he worked closely with me at the mines, and his whole family, some of whom are in the house, his wife and son, are here, Karen, and where is Randy? Up there he is. And they practically lived at the mines various times over the years while we were conducting the work. There's the Terry Graves set up. Yes.
That's why I'm so
This photograph, I very much have to McCraw was so generous. This is part of J.P. McNulty's private stash that was his, that he held on to until he died in 1933. And he passed down his whole estate of collected possessions, which went through his family. People weren't particularly interested. Family members weren't too interested. And it trickled down until in 2006, I believe it was, Pat contacted me, and she was writing the book, and she offered turquoise to me, gave me, she was very generous with it all, and I couldn't have been more thrilled to get my hands on that turquoise, which I'm just now able to cut some of that and pieces in the showcase downstairs.
Wow.
Many of them are from that collection.
Wow.
This is all surreal turquoise.
Wow. Wow.
Most people in today's Santa Fe have never seen the really high quality surrealist turquoise. But these stones were all mined probably at least 100 years ago. This is the bolo. I'm wearing this bolo now. This coin kicked around. My father gave that to me 40 years ago. And kicked around, and I was trying to figure out what to do with it. And just last year, I looked closely at it, and I saw the date, 1891. Bingo! That's the year McNulty started mining at the Tiffany mine. I said, I'm going to make a bolo.
Wow.
So I made
That
this
gives
up.
me chills.
First time I'm wearing it.
Oh.
Santa Fe. Now, this is all surreal turquoise here.
Gosh, that's beautiful. Wow.
It's a great range of colors.
Yeah.
We made that bolo for our illustrious Speaker of the
okay.
House, Ryan Eagle.
Wow. Good
He's
guy.
right across the street.
Wow, wow.
And then in 2012, for the 100-year anniversary, I was asked to make this piece for the cover of 100-year anniversary of statehood. These are some interesting uses of some material from the mines. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes into anybody that, from the ground up. I mean, you don't know what you're dealing with until you take it to the grind wheel. So a tremendous amount of work sorting through and test cutting and so forth, and only probably a very small percentage of it ever gets made into jewelry.
Really? That's cool.
That was a love gift. Yep, Allie's wearing a tiny little thing. That's a Mike Coney's photograph, by the way. My wife tells me I have to have some water. And she's going to entertain you with music. These are all Sirius turquoise.
So pretty.
I'm just experimenting with all kinds of wild designs. Here again, this is Scott DeFriend's work. This is some of the turquoise that came in that treasure photograph. Blue nuggets. And then, of course, adding Sirius turquoise to Sirius jewelry.
So cool.
So now I got into diamonds. Well, I'm not turquoise yet.
God, I wish I could find my bracelet. I wish I could find my bracelet. My millennium
I mean, not these sparkly little diamonds, real diamonds. I mean, rough diamonds. Really got excited about rough diamonds.
What year?
Yeah, that's a good question. Would have been in the neighborhood of 10 and 12 years ago, I think. All these wonderful innovations along the way, for instance, laser welding enabled me to do these pieces where I free-form bits of turquoise joined by diamonds. It really wouldn't be easy to do without the laser welder. Buckles. Well, buckles, like I say, was a very big part of my career, and it was really the generator. So much activity. These really early works. Earlier there was a picture. I carved all these designs out, and I really didn't know what I was doing. It was a huge learning curve, as everything is. But these are the ones that really launched me with these fluted designs. This is an example, Shelley, like this, an early template. There was no need for me to be copying traditional Western buckles and what have you, because already Bolin and makers were making those things, so I had to come up with my own design ideas. And this is just one example that I made many variations over the years.
Oh, they're so just spectacular. Oh, that's cool.
I really had a lot of fun with this one. This one I designed sitting in the Zocalo or the Hardin at
Wow, that's cool.
San Miguel Allende. And no, David Yerman never sued me. I know what you're all thinking. David Yerman was a Byzantine master from the thousands of years ago when he designed that. This is a pile of tufa molds that represents a lot of work and a lot of design work, and I still use tufa. Tufa being a very important part of especially Navajo and many other native jewelers over the years that used tufa stone to melt and pour these designs right directly into the stone. It's really backward stuff. Endless variations. I'm really restless. I get probably got some ADD kind of thing. And I just can't sit still. So I'm constantly tweaking designs and making new designs. Instead of just making something and cranking it out and make a lot of money. That bores me. I can't do it. So I'm always restlessly seeking new inspirations and new designs. There's that tile.
Get it from
What I did
people.
with this tile of old tufa molds, rather than throw them out, I actually had a Bill Sellin. He's in the house. He made me a frame, and I filled that frame up. I made a whole artwork out of those tufa molds. One of the great things about associations with all these leather makers. I mean, this stuff has taken me all over the world. And associations with all manner of friends especially in the Western business, such as Manuel, one of my favorite people on the planet. And his children are sitting right here before you. Manny, Jesse, Aurelia, awesome. The rhinestone membrane. More variations. This was a really fun innovation. Cutting up old American coins and surface designs.
That's cool.
So, moving right along. You know, the book, by the way, it's all about the book. Pushing books here, folks. Which is really kind of dumb because it's free. But the book is going to be way more than what you're seeing here. This is just a small portion of it. And it will be added and subtracted
Oh, I love that.
This piece was made for a pop art show
Okay.
in
Kiana would love
New York
that.
City. And it was Western pop art.
Bang,
And
blam.
it was one artist that did all these really great
Oh, I wish I
Western
could get a free
pop art
kid.
subjects. They can look like little book illustrations or what have you, and all that. But they also decided they would have buffaloes and trophy
Oh, that's
buffaloes.
cool.
But that's what this stuff is about. Pop art. Always experimenting.
Those are cool.
I love working with all these stones. Here again, this is mostly sand cast, tuba cast. Kingman turquoise. Now when you get two classes of turquoise, natural and not natural. But natural is, you only want the best. And otherwise, it's generally not worth using. It's not beautiful, or it's not as beautiful as it needs to be. So much of it is stabilized with plastics. And there may be other techniques, but Kingman turquoise is really the greatest producer. I think he's the largest in the nation and maybe the world. Phil? Maybe. Marty? The Cobalt family, they were very, very good friends. But this is all Kingman turquoise, and because of the nature of it, it's able to be cut and carved. Just, there's so many things you can do with it, and it's affordable. It's not going to cost, an arm and a leg. So I really enjoy making large pieces.
Oh.
Oh, well, surprise. I mean, it's a beautiful material. It's legitimate, real turquoise. It is turquoise. And it wasn't for the plastics industry and combining with turquoise, there just wouldn't be very much jewelry out here on the street. Of course, then you have the Chinese that came along in the 80s. And prior to that, Chinese turquoise was not available. And then it blew open starting in the 80s and enabled Americans and other people throughout the world to produce tremendous amounts of jewelry with very nice turquoise at a very affordable rate. It wasn't, let's face it, those people are giving it away. Leather work by Howard Knight in, I think it's Stephenville, Montana. This was a fun little variation. You know what that is? That's your dog's nose. And I made some of those in silver, and then I decided I'd like to see it in gold and black diamond. Here again, Kingman turquoise with a variety of color and characteristics. It's just beautiful stuff. Kingman turquoise there. Oh yeah, we're not done yet. Yeah. Well, he made me do
He made me do it.
When Billy Gibbons, I think probably everybody knows from ZZ Top, came and asked me to make him a skull buckle, I just he stopped me in my tracks because this was in 1990. Skulls were not a thing yet, and he was really, fringe on this. This was not a real mainstream thing yet. So I really was not all that excited about it, but I decided to take the opportunity to do this. And the first piece that I made for him launched 1,000 skulls.
Wow.
Then 1,000 skulls soon.
Wow.
I want to show you that particular.
My brother.
This was made for.
Oh my God, that's so
the
Mark, my brother.
concrete of Fort Worth, Texas. That's another piece of Kingman turquoise that carved into that skull. And it was really kind of funny because I've been working with this stuff for a couple of years before I started feeling this is one I made.
Oh, sure, no problem.
Started it all. Laid the skull sideways with the tongue coming out. Excuse me. I made umpteen cow turquoise skulls. Then I graduated. I graduated to marble and limestone and started carving full-size sculpture. But I began this other line of diamond plate, starting with these patterns I saw in the sidewalk in Guadalajara.
Really?
And I just thought, these are great patterns. And this would make some real interesting jewelry. So I launched off into diamond plate. And actually it was a big hit, and what's interesting about it is it was never really imitated. I never saw anybody else do it. But there it is. A great photograph by Michael Niece, styled by Shelley. Even boot tips. I just thought the combination of materials, I love it. That was the craziest thing I came up with for a while. But, I've never really been driven by putting the dollar signs out in front of the design work. It's always about the design. And if I believe in it, I'm just going to go ahead and do it, whether it's crazy or not. And generally speaking, it's pretty crazy, but it works out. The Constellations collection, that was another one. More, it's getting later now. We're finally getting closer to 2024, and this was another whole thing that jumped in my head, and I just ran with it. And what I would do is I would make cut steel and carve these steel designs in tool steel. And then those are all hand pressed and handmade to create the jewelry.
Oh.
And then there is the greatest thing and seeing it on the most beautiful mountain woman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about. I mean, the thing is, it's to be worn, it's a statement. And here again, this is Surrealist turquoise. I love the combinations of gold and silver. Real tricky business making that stuff. But it's really great when it works. Yeah, it's just juicy stuff. Using 24 karat gold because it just, the lesser golds just didn't show up. This is an awesome piece of Chinese turquoise that Wendy has never let me forget. I shouldn't have let it slip through my finger. Katrina Kavanaugh is in the building. There she is in the far back. She's kind of shy, but she's a very beautiful woman. And she is my niece. She's married to my nephew.
Wow.
Love her. Well, and finally, I guess this is the collection that I think more than anything has really been a big whiz bang thing for me. It just provided so many opportunities for design. And I started this because in 2009, I wasn't real sure what year was going to be the 200-year anniversary, or 400-year anniversary at Santa Fe, but I knew that it really wasn't 2010, but I started thinking that I had to do something to commemorate this fantastic city and how wonderful it has been to me living here and all the opportunities that just being toward it. So I kind of gravitated to this idea of giving Santa Fe its own mint. It was the poorest of colonies back in the colonial days. And of course, it didn't have any silver or gold to speak of. So it was a real poverty place. But I decided to give Santa Fe its own Spanish colonial type coinage. And I just sat down once again with a piece of steel and started carving dies. I carved in steel these patterns. And then when I went to the city of Santa Fe and asked them to please give me permission to use the city seal, they didn't even respond. So I said, I don't need you. I designed my own seal.
I love it.
I'm much happier with that anyway. By the way, plus ultra is another part of the Spanish colonial coinage. Traditionally, going way back, it is actually the Spanish motto, and the words plus ultra means further beyond.
Wow.
And to me, that is one of the most meaningful, inspirational terms that one could care to wear on their body. Further beyond. That's what we're all about. Moving ahead. So, plus ultra has been incorporated in a lot of it, along with infinity and And symbols such as diamonds. Diamonds to me represent forever. They are the hardest material. They're not quite as big of a deal as De Beers made out of them. But they sure did convince everybody else in the world that there was a whole wide world. And so why not, right? And just endless combinations of the gold on silver. I love making very large earrings, but naturally they have to be very lightweight because I don't want to hurt you.
Right?
I want you to wear it. I don't want you to just throw it in the drawer and forget it because it hurts too much. So I endeavor to make any pair of earrings, no matter how large, they have to be very lightweight, and they have to be structurally sound enough. They're not just going to crumple or something. And so that's a whole big part of what I do when I'm trying to raw diamond.
Yeah,
Here
I
again,
know.
we have these I call primal diamonds. These are rough diamonds that are embedded right into the silver and gold. There's no settings. And they are just a symbol of forever and what they really are. Is they're the hardest material. They don't sparkle, but they are representative of, well, the best things in life. So much fun carving turquoises and everything. But tell you the truth, I couldn't keep up with it. I couldn't keep up with all the carving and everything and making everything else. So I moved along.
It's beautiful.
Rose
Yeah.
cut diamonds. Gotta have shot glasses, right? Everybody has shot glasses. Man. So many variations. Just mind blowing. This is some of the McNulty turquoise, the McNulty estate. Thank you very much, Pat. And you Arnold. Love the way this kingdom turquoise sometimes, not that most any mind doesn't have a whole range of colors. Got to credit Shelley Neisner producing those t-shirts for me. And this bag was the only handbag I think I ever made. And there's the guy, he ran out of breath. But there's more to come. Well, there's an awful lot more to the story than what you see there. I mean, it's not just all, there's so much of it all that has to do with people again. All the, sales. I spent almost as much time in sales as I did in designing and making and stuff. And went all over the world. But the sales part was a lot of fun because we have Shelley there to help and Mike. And then I would always have my support crew of friends and other manufacturers. We used to attend the trade show that was held every year in Denver, the Denver Western Show. And it was a collection of probably the largest group of true American entrepreneurial people that you could want to ever see around. And
Love you, Doug. You're awesome.
oh, well, I just want to be awesome. I'm awesome. You're awesome. Cynthia Kent, Trend Magazine. Bravo on your 25th anniversary issue. Fabulous. So, if there could possibly be any questions after all that, Alan,
Yeah,
there's
well,
Alan
I-
Hoffman back there. Well, hey, Alan Hoffman.
Doggy, aren't you going to give out a paper book for those who have too much to do to sit and look at you on the computer? Please.
In print.
You would have to buy a dolly, it would be so big, and it would wipe out half the forests of China, just making the paper to create a printed version of the book. I mean, Cynthia's already doing that 25th anniversary Trend Magazine, by the way. But the phone book. I mean, it's really quick. But if anyone wants to make this into a, book, movie, or whatever they want to do with it, you can call my wife. That's the other thing I want to talk about.